Hey there, I'm some random person on the internet that you don't care about, and I'm here to talk to you about setting up OpenGL on Visual Studio 2017. If you're like me, you're looking for a video that tells you how to do everything from start to finish, and so far haven't found anything. Haven't really found any resources for specifically Visual Studio 2017 yet, so I figured I'd make my own video. So first things first, if we open up the Visual Studio installer, I have selected a few extra things here, but for your needs, all you need is the desktop development with C++, and if you scroll down, I also selected the game development with C++. Not sure if that's needed, but I got it anyway. As soon as you got those two things selected, just go ahead and install them. It'll take a few minutes to run through that, so if you want to pause the video while that's installing, then we'll continue on to the next part. Closing that, I'd have just a normal Visual Studio window open. I just go to File, New Project, Empty Project, and I'll just call this project OpenGL first, and say OK. It'll take just a minute for it to do everything. And there's no files on this, so we're just going to right-click on the source files folder over here on the Solution Explorer, click Add, New Item. We're going to add a CPP file and just call it main. And that's going to load up. It's going to be completely empty. We don't want to put anything in there quite yet because we'll get back to that. Now, as far as setting up OpenGL, if you're like me, don't really know anything about OpenGL aside from understanding a few like functions and just really ready to get jumping into it, you may not realize that OpenGL is just a basic core framework that Microsoft makes, but in order to tap into that, you do need additional libraries and stuff. And if you're also like me, you may not realize that you have to compile some of those libraries manually in order for them to work for OpenGL. So I actually did find a resource online that I will link in the description. It's actually just learnopengl.com, and they have this glorious step-by-step instruction set on how to get that up and running. But just to make sure that we cover everything, I figured I'd go over it in video format so that we can walk through it together. So as you see here, the very first thing it recommends is GLFW, which is the library that allows OpenGL to make windows that you can actually bring up and manipulate a 2D or 3D item in it, whether it be like triangles or actual cubes or anything like that. So we go to their download page, which I have here. If we're doing Visual Studio 2017, we do not want to use these precompiled binaries because it only goes up to Visual Studio 2015. So we're going to go to the source package, and it's going to download down here. We're going to show it in the folder as soon as it's done. I'm going to pull over my downloads here. We're going to extract that file. And it's currently extracting. Now we're going to go into it. Going to go into the source folder. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So we have the stuff that we need there, but we actually need a separate tool to generate a Visual Studio project from those files. And once that project is generated, we will go into the project in Visual Studio, compile it, and then that will give us the library we need to bring into our OpenGL project. So in order to do that, we're going to go to CMake, which you'll see here. They have a download page, which I already have open. And we're just going to download I'm on Windows here, so I'm going to download this MSI file. It's going to take a minute or so for it to download. Okay, so we're going to run that setup. Now I am on Windows 10, and it comes up with this protection message on my screen. It only gives me don't run, but you can click more info and hit run anyway. And it will bring up the setup window. And we do just go through this whole process. We're going to allow that to install. Okay, so that should now come up in our start menu. If we do CMake, it's right there. So we're going to find the GLFW files that we downloaded, the source files, and they are in my downloads folder, GLFW. And we're going to select the entire project folder. And then we're going to copy this directory, and we're going to paste it in. And we're going to add a new folder by just typing in a slash and then type in the word build. And then we're going to hit configure. It's going to say that directory build doesn't exist, so we're going to create it. And we're going to say Visual Studio 2017, which is version 15. And if you want to compile this only for Windows 64, then you can do that. But I'm going to do a 32-bit compilation so that it'll work on all computers, basically. So we're going to do that. Hit finish. And it's going to take a minute. And it's going to come up with some red options when it's done, like this. We want to hit configure again, and that'll finalize all of those options. It's okay to keep some of them unselected. I just keep it exactly like that. We hit generate, and it says generating done fairly quickly. So, excuse me. Now we are going back in to the build folder that we made. And right here, it's a glfw.sln. That is our Visual Studio project. So we open that. I'm just going to select VS 2017. It opened up on another screen here. Let me pull it over. Okay, so here's our project. All you want to do is hit build and build solution. And this might take a little bit, depending on how fast your computer is. It's going to go through all of this compilation here. And it succeeded there. So now all we need to do here is close this. And it's going to add a lot of folders to that directory. Only thing that we need here is if we go to source and then debug, there is our library. So if we want to open up, let's just open up our documents folder. Let's make a new folder and just call it OpenGL stuff. We're going to have one folder for libraries and one folder for include. So this library that we made is going to go into the libraries folder. And then we're going to go back to the main GLFW directory that we had downloaded here. And we're just going to go to this include folder. And we're just going to drag this entire subfolder into include. So now we should have the library in the libraries folder and the GLFW subfolder in the include folder. Okay, so that's going well so far. We're almost done. Now, if we go back to the tutorial here, it'll tell us that we need, if I can find it, GLAD. So GLAD is a site that basically generates files on the fly depending on what options you tell it to do. So for this, we're going to do C/C++, specification OpenGL, profile. Now that here is you need to select core in order for this to work appropriately. And then API, we're just going to choose the version for OpenGL. For me, I know that my video card can support OpenGL 4.5, and every time that you select the version, it'll reset this to compatibility, change it back to core. So to know what version you can program for, you need to figure out what version of OpenGL your video card can support. I have an NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti, and if you go to their website, their specification page, you can see OpenGL 4.5. So I know that's the version I'm going to program with. So that's what I selected on the GLAD website. Now, in order to find your version of supported OpenGL, whether it's NVIDIA or AMD, or if you're running integrated graphics on like an AMD processor or an Intel processor, you want to go to either of those sites. So if it's an Intel CPU, search your CPU model number in Google, pull up the specifications, and it should tell you what OpenGL version you can run. Anyway, so now that we've done all that, you want to make sure generate a loader is selected and hit generate. Now, I'm just going to download the entire zip folder just so it makes things easier for us. Going to extract that. And there it is. Okay, so important to note here, we do want to include both subfolders in the include folder into our OpenGL stuff include folder. So it should look like that. Okay, so this is also important. This glad.c file in the source folder is not a library, so do not take it into the libraries folder here in our OpenGL stuff folder. Instead, we want to put it directly into our source files subfolder in our OpenGL project. So just drag glad and drop it in source files. Okay, legitimately, last thing, now we need to associate all of our, we need to configure the directories for the include and the library. So in order to do that, I don't know if you saw me there, but we just go in our project, go up to project, properties. Then we're going to go to VCC++ directories. Now here you see include directories. Click this area here, the drop-down menu, and then edit. That brings up this window, which allows you to add a new directory. So click this new line button, then click this ellipses. And now we're going to navigate to our OpenGL stuff folder and just select the, let's see here, are we doing the include directories first? So we're going to select this folder and hit OK. Now we're going to go do the same thing with the libraries. So click this one, drop down, edit. We're going to add a new line, ellipses, and documents, OpenGL stuff, libraries, select folder. Okay, one last place. If you go to linker and then input, we need to add a couple extra things to the additional dependencies. And that brings up this line. And here's where we want to type out the names of the additional dependencies. And if we go back to this tutorial here, it'll tell us exactly what we need to add. Right here. it tells us to add OpenGL 32.lib and glfw3.lib. So we're going to do OpenGL 32.lib and then hit enter to do a new line, and glfw3.lib, and hit OK, and hit apply and OK. So now, moment of truth, we should have everything set for this. So if we just add include.glad and paste this into our project, no errors there, that's good. And there's one other line, there it is. We want to include the glfw. So it's int main return 0. Let's build that. There we go. Build 1 succeeded. Now, if you want to test that this worked out properly, we can come back to the tutorial and just go to Hello Window. And if we scroll down to the bottom, it should have source code. Here's the source code. So let me just copy all of this, paste it into my project here, and run. And hopefully we should see an OpenGL window. Yep, and it pulled up on another monitor, but there it is, right there. Learn OpenGL. And there you go. Now you should have everything you need to get started now that you have everything set up for this. And I really recommend that tutorial because it tells you that you do also need other libraries in order to adequately actually program in OpenGL. And the nice thing is the unfortunate thing is you do have to go through the process of manually adding the libraries back to your folder. But the good thing is that you've already associated those directories. So if I can find it, our OpenGL stuff folder, you can just drag and drop new header files into the include folder and drag and drop new library files into the libraries folder, and the project will automatically pick them up. The only thing that you might need to do is manually add the name of some of them back under the input where we added OpenGL and glfw3.lib. Those you might need to add in manually, but the directories are already added, so you shouldn't need to do that anymore. I hope this was helpful. If it was, then great. I wish you the best of luck. It's turning out to be more challenging than I anticipated, and might be for you too, but at least this started you off on the right foot. Thanks for watching.